She was never one to be tied down.
She was a very free-spirited person.
She had a lot of love to give.
Just this great ray of sunshine.
Until it was suddenly snuffed out.
It's a homicide. Multiple gunshots. Multiple spent rounds.
There was a puddle of blood around her head.
I was in denial. It's like, nope, it can't be.
Your heart goes out to these people.
Everything points to a love triangle gone wrong.
She wasn't really fully ready to commit to one person.
What is she having for?
That's someone that she wasn't going to take serious.
We need to call the police.
Oh, it's fine. Let's just clean it up.
That's a recipe for disaster.
But which of the men in her life had pulled the trigger?
I said, what do you mean, Papa? He says, he's a shot.
I would have never thought he would have done that.
That was crazy.
April 30th, 2020. It's a Thursday morning in Houston, Texas, the Lone Star State's largest city.
The metropolitan area is between 7 and 8 million people.
A lot of people are migrating here because of job opportunities.
We got all kind of commerce coming and going.
It's a great place to where even if you're not from here, you can find your place and feel at home.
But at the Houston home of Judy Rodriguez, she spent that Thursday morning becoming increasingly worried about her daughter, 33-year-old Darlene Solis.
Wednesday, I texted her, didn't hear anything back from her. Thursday, I messaged her and I said, are you okay? When she didn't respond, that really worried me.
Darlene was very connected to friends and family, would text her mom multiple times a day.
So I started making phone calls to her friends and say, hey, have you all heard from Darlene?
Hello? Hey, Diana, this is Darlene's mom. When's the last time you spoke with her?
Nobody had heard anything.
Really? No, this isn't like her.
Anxiety mounting, Judy calls her ex-husband, Darlene's stepfather, for help.
He's a sheriff's deputy, and I said, hey, I haven't heard from Darlene for 2 days, and none of her friends have heard from her.
Will you please go to her apartment and see if she's there? Thank you.
Darlene's stepfather agrees to head over, but asks his ex-wife to also contact the Houston police.
He told me to go ahead and call 911 because that was not his jurisdiction.
Houston Police, what are you reporting?
Yes, I was calling so you could do a welfare check on my daughter.
He needed, backup.
Do you know how long it'll be before your husband gets there?
He said he's 5 minutes out.
The Houston police are still en route. But Darlene's stepdad doesn't wait.
He turned on his body camera and had the apartment manager unlock Darlene's door.
With his training, his instinct, he knew that something was wrong.
"33-year-old Darlene Solis grew up in a tight-knit and loving family.
We had birthday parties at the house, Halloween parties, Christmas, we all got together.
She loved her family. She was the oldest of 5 siblings, and she was really close to them.
And her loyalty didn't stop there.
She has the biggest heart ever. She cares about people, and she's there for all of her friends.
They would go to Darlene if they needed someone to talk to, a shoulder to cry on.
She would always be the one to reach out to all of our friends and see how they're doing. She would make us dinner. She loved just catering to her friends.
In fact, Darlene spent her days and nights catering to almost everyone.
She started taking college courses for being a respiratory therapist and started working a side job as a bartender. And money was just coming in for her. So she stopped going to school.
She was there for years. So she built relationships with other people and her regulars and just the community.
When Darlene wasn't behind the bar, chances were she was off on an adventure.
Traveling brought joy to her. She traveled to Japan, she traveled to Vietnam. Even if it was a road trip, she would always make the time to go and travel.
And Darlene almost always had someone to share in her adventures.
Darlene was a very free-spirited person. She had a lot of male friends.
One was a construction worker named Corey Campbell.
It began through a mutual friend. They had met up at a bar for friends to get together, and then from there they started talking.
So you're a bartender?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can see that. You're really good with people.
Thank you.
Yeah. They hit it off. They seemed like a very good match.
They dated for the next 3 years.
She was happy they did have a good relationship.
He was a great guy, very respectful.
But in the end, it didn't last.
He was on the road all the time, and it seemed like that was hindering their relationship.
And when a new job took Corey to Salt Lake City, Darlene moved on to a man named Marcus Jennings.
Hey, babe.
She said that he was very nice. He treated her so well.
How was your day?
Better now.
And she ended up really enjoying his company. They spent a lot of time together.
I've never in my life seen her so happy.
But now, Darlene is missing. And her stepfather, a deputy sheriff, has gone to do a welfare check at her apartment.
Once he got in, it was not trashed. Didn't look like anything had been stolen.
However, Darlene's apartment is a crime scene.
Central, this is 42 David 24. I need HPD to be notified to meet me for a DOA. Apartment 110. It's my daughter.
He found Darlene dead of multiple gunshot wounds.
It's a homicide.
Darlene Solis bounced back with a new man named Marcus Jennings.
When Darlene started to date Marcus, you could tell she was happy. I've never in my life seen her so happy.
He was just always nice to her. I liked the way he treated her.
But their budding romance would be a short one. Darlene's stepfather, a Harris County Sheriff's deputy, has found his stepdaughter dead inside her apartment.
It's my daughter. Multiple gunshots. Multiple spent rounds.
He'd been in that situation thousands of times. He's responded to phone calls from everything from petty theft to, murders and aggravated assaults.
But this case is so different because this isn't some random patrol call for this deputy. This is his daughter.
When the Houston police arrive at the apartment, Darlene's stepfather turns the scene over to them.
This deputy was struggling with the scene of his daughter and all the emotions that takes place.
When police and EMTs enter the apartment, they confirm that Darlene is dead.
There are no vital signs.
The body was exhibiting clear signs of rigor mortis.
This had happened maybe 2 days prior.
And now it's up to the homicide detectives to piece together precisely what happened.
As you walk through the apartment, a typical homicide detective will allow the scene to talk to them. Are there items missing? Is there forced entry? Are there broken windows? Is this a disorganized scene? What's out of place? Was there an argument?
There doesn't appear to be any signs of a struggle or a robbery.
Things are not missing. Things are not forced into.
Whoever had killed her looked like they kind of caught her by surprise. She was just in the bathroom. Looked like she was making herself up to go somewhere.
Her body was positioned on her back, facing up, and in a position where it had seen that she had fallen and had remained in that fallen position since the time of her death.
She had been shot multiple times with a .40 caliber handgun.
There were 4 shell casings that were recovered from the crime scene.
They also find a .40 caliber handgun.
The gun was found under the bed, so whoever killed her leaves the murder weapon there on the scene.
All indications, standing out from the outside looking in, would indicate that this would be somebody that Darlene knew. That this was somebody who was in the apartment, did not have to force their way in.
But who? The crime scene provides a possible clue.
There was a blow-up mattress that was out in the living room.
There was luggage by the side of the bed.
But if someone had been staying with Darlene, where are they now? And did they have anything to do with her death?
Hoping for more information, the detectives turn to Darlene's stepfather, who has just gotten off the phone with her mother.
My ex-husband calls me back and says, we found her. She's here. And it was kind of like a relief, like, okay, good, she's there. And he tells me there's a deputy that's gonna go pick you up at the house and bring you over here. And it's like, oh, okay. And then after I hung up with him, I'm like, wait a minute. And I knew she was gone.
While Darlene's mother waits for a deputy to drive her to the crime scene, her ex-husband fills the detectives in on what he knows.
You just got to feel for somebody like this. Police officers are people too. And to come across that kind of scene, and this has to be so horrific, it's hard to put into words.
We're gonna need to ask you a few questions.
I understand.
His mind pretty much shut off and turned into his professional role as officer investigator to figure out what he needed to do to make sure that the investigation and everything was done correctly from the start to make sure that whoever did it was held accountable.
Kudos to him, because it shows that the strength that some of these people have to draw upon in a situation like that.
Do you know of anyone who'd want to do this to Darlene?
No, she started dating this new guy named Marcus.
It's in that beginning stage where people are enthralled with each other.
How many cases have police covered where a boyfriend got jealous and killed their girlfriend?
And according to her stepfather, Marcus may have had reason to be jealous.
She also has an ex named Corey Campbell.
Do you think he had something to do with it?
I really don't know, but she did go to visit him last week.
Darlene had flown out to Utah to see Corey.
She took the opportunity to fly out there, and then they drove back to Houston together.
Detectives investigating the murder of Darlene Solis have learned that she had recently flown to Salt Lake City to visit her ex-boyfriend, Corey Campbell.
Corey was out of town working, and since she did love traveling, just going anywhere, she took the opportunity to fly out there.
She'd gone out and spent a few days in Salt Lake City with Corey.
And this new guy, Marcus, did he know she went to see him?
I really don't know.
Thank you for your time. Thanks, sir.
But there may be someone who can help. Darlene's friend, Melissa Hoffman, who arrived at the apartment shortly before Darlene's stepfather.
Our other friend, Diana, reached out to Darlene and didn't hear anything from her, which was weird. So she called me and asked me to go to Darlene's apartment because I was closer to see if she's home and if she's okay. And then her dad ended up showing up.
402 okay. I need this hallway clear.
I knew something bad happened in that apartment.
Melissa, go over there, please. Melissa, go over there. Please go over there. Please go.
But it wasn't confirmed to me until the medical examiners came out and I overheard them say her time of death. And then that's when I realized that she was gone.
My condolences to you, okay? We're gonna work this hard, and we're gonna do everything we can to find out what happened.
The detectives start by asking Melissa about Darlene's ex-boyfriend, Corey.
How long were they together?
I want to say like maybe 3 years, on and off.
They would argue and then they would get back on good terms again.
He would bribe her with gifts and stuff to try to get back on her good side all the time.
He was a manipulator. He was one of those that thought that he could always fix the situation with buying gifts or sending a dozen roses to her work.
But then it always, go back to the same thing.
He was displaying jealous behavior.
For her to be controlled by someone wasn't the ideal relationship she would want to be in.
So it's just not been a very stable relationship.
When someone does that, when they try to shower you with gifts, none of these gifts, none of the showering that I'm showing is helping whatever we broke up for in the first place, right? This person is not fixing the issue at hand. It's the smoke and mirrors.
Finally, Melissa says, a few months ago, Darlene told Corey enough is enough.
She had told him that they were over.
But she hadn't cut him out of her life completely.
She wanted to stay friends. That's who she was.
So Melissa says it wasn't surprising when Darlene told her she was going off to Salt Lake to see Corey.
She flew out to Utah to spend time with him.
But while she was there, Corey explained that he had lost his job and was going back home to Houston.
She allowed him to come back into her home, and she still allowed him to stay there while he didn't have a job or got back on his feet. I didn't think it was a good idea, but Darlene was a very strong-minded person. She was going to do what she wanted to do.
However, there was one complication. Darlene's new boyfriend, Marcus.
They've been seeing each other for a couple months.
And did the ex know about him?
I think he knew about him.
Marcus knew that Darlene was going to Utah. And when they came back, he knew that Corey was moving in to Darlene's apartment while he got back on his feet.
But according to Melissa, Marcus had no reason to be jealous of Corey.
Darlene wasn't staying at the apartment with Corey. She was staying with Marcus.
It's definitely sounding like a love triangle situation.
Or is it? Because according to Melissa, Corey and Marcus weren't the only men in Darlene's life.
There was another person who she'd also been dating.
What is his name?
I don't know his real name.
She only knows that people call him JR.
Detectives investigating the murder of Darlene Solis have uncovered 3 possible suspects. Her ex, Corey Campbell, her new boyfriend, Marcus Jennings, and another man that her friends only know as JR.
Darlene met JR while she was out one night with her friends, and they hit it off right away while they were out. They exchanged phone numbers and I guess just kept in contact.
According to Melissa, it was more of a fling than a full-blown relationship.
He was very young. He was way younger than her, so that's someone that she wasn't going to take serious, but just kind of wanted him as a friend because she did enjoy his company.
But now that Darlene is dead, the detectives have to wonder, had JR wanted more from the relationship?
Perhaps JR got spurned.
Naturally, the police are going to look into who's JR? Who is this person? What's his story?
Darlene! Darlene!
But before they can, one of the three men in Darlene's life arrives on the scene.
Marcus showed up because he had been told something had happened to Darlene.
He heard nothing from her, and that was just so uncharacteristic of Darlene that a lot of people started getting concerned.
At least that's what Marcus tells the detectives.
Just tell me everything. I'll ask you some questions that may be uncomfortable, but we want to find out.
He's very cooperative. He's willing to tell him anything.
However, he mostly wanted to tell them about Darlene's complicated relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Corey Campbell.
He got fired from his work, so
He got let go from his job.
she came back and she said she's gonna let him stay until he find a place.
Darlene had a kind heart, and she felt sorry for her ex.
She just letting him stay there.
I didn't really. She said that's what she was doing.
Marcus said that Darlene more or less moved in with him while Corey crashed at her place.
She would stay with Marcus, and then she would just go home, grab some clothes, shower, get ready, and then leave again.
She said she wasn't trying to work nothing out with him no more.
Still, Marcus admits he wasn't crazy about the arrangement. But he also knew not to push it.
It was still a newer relationship. He felt that he and Darlene were not at that point yet where he should or could dictate kind of what her choices were.
I didn't want to ask too much.
But Marcus says that the more Darlene told him about Corey, the less he liked the situation.
She said that he was trying to argue.
They're arguing. Okay.
According to Marcus, Corey had been trying to get Darlene to take him back.
But he says Darlene wasn't interested.
She was just feeling sorry for him.
And he says as the tension grew, he urged her not to go back to her place.
He said, I'll go buy you clothes, I'll go buy you makeup. You don't have to go back.
But according to Marcus, Darlene wouldn't listen.
She said, that's my place. I'm going and leaving when I want. She was a little hard-headed as well.
According to Marcus, he last saw Darlene on Tuesday, roughly 48 hours before police found her body.
She stayed with me.
Okay.
I brought her back on Tuesday around noon.
He also says they made plans for her to come over to his place again that night.
I called her probably around 3 or 4 that day, and then she said, I come out, get ready, and after that, she didn't answer the phone no more.
Marcus says he didn't think anything bad had happened to Darlene, just that she was avoiding him.
He's like, I figured maybe she changed her mind and decided to stay with him.
I really didn't.
But now the question for detectives is whether or not Marcus is giving them the whole story.
He answers all the questions, and so that in and of itself doesn't eliminate a suspect, but I mean, it's a good sign. Thank you, Marcus.
Then, after talking to Marcus, the detectives try to track down the third man in Darlene's life.
Darlene's friend Melissa had JR's number, so detectives were able to reach him by phone.
It turns out his name is Joey Reed.
Hello?
Look, your name came up during our investigation, and I guess you're an acquaintance of Darlene.
Yes, sir.
He describes his relationship with Darlene as a casual one.
It was like more of a friends with benefits type of relationship. Just nothing so serious, but we're just having fun and day by day.
JR's account aligns with what Darlene's friend Melissa told detectives about the relationship.
Although JR says he hadn't seen Darlene in over a week on account of the Corey situation.
What did she tell you about that?
Basically, that she was just trying to get rid of him.
According to JR, Corey was bad news.
JR described Corey as this toxic person.
Y'all be serious. That was crazy.
Hey, you can't leave me. You hear me? You just can't.
Joey Reed, who says he was only casually dating Darlene Solis, has told the detectives investigating her murder that Darlene had problems with her ex-boyfriend, Corey Campbell.
She mentioned that, man, he's crazy. He'll knock on doors, keep knocking.
It just wasn't like somebody in love. It was more like somebody obsessed.
Darlene! Corey just wasn't ready to let their relationship go.
He kept on playing some sympathy move on her, like, if you leave me, I'll kill myself if you ever leave me.
Hey, you can't leave me. You hear me? You just can't.
JR claims that in addition to threatening to kill himself, Corey had broken into Darlene's apartment before moving to Utah.
He wasn't there when she got home, but Darlene knew it was him.
Rick Don is like trashing the place.
She told you about that?
I mean, I was there.
Her makeup was on the floor. Her bed sheets were on the floor. Her closet was just everywhere. It was a big mess.
I was just like, damn, that guy's going crazy like this.
He told her that she needed to make a police report just to have that in writing, showing that he did that.
And since she refused to like put charges on him, even though everybody told her to.
She just felt bad. She didn't want to put him in a bad position.
But does that mean Corey was Darlene's killer?
It's possible that JR or Marcus could have been pointing the finger at Corey to divert suspicion from themselves.
Police absolutely made sure to keep that in consideration.
However, the detectives also have reason to suspect that JR and Marcus are telling the truth.
Everything has pointed back to Corey, his jealous behavior, and he had opportunity. I mean, he was living there in the apartment.
And unlike Marcus or JR, Corey is nowhere to be found.
Additional interviews with Darlene's family and friends only add to the suspicion that Corey Campbell was behind the murder.
There were conversations that Darlene had with her closest friends about Corey's aggression, and that Corey was not willing or ready to let go.
He was doing little things to let her know, I'm still here.
He would call her up and text her when she's out with her friends, say, what are you doing?
That all added to this general theme of the possessive and aggressive nature that Corey had with Darlene.
And when detectives sit down with Darlene's mother, she tells them that she had been worried about Corey for some time.
When he broke into her apartment, I kind of realized that he was not good for her.
It's like there's this whole other side to him that no one knows about.
Darlene's mother also says she had warned her daughter about letting Corey back into her life.
I told her, there's no reason for him to be staying at your apartment. And that last day that I saw her, I told her, you need to tell him he needs to move out.
He had the ability to go back home, to get somewhere to stay, but it all goes back to power and control. I can control how she views me and how she sees me. She's going to see me as vulnerable and can play on her emotions and allow me to have control over her by being in her space and taking up her space.
But while Darlene's mother says she thought Corey was taking advantage of her daughter, she never suspected he would actually hurt Darlene.
I would have never thought that he would have done that.
I don't think anyone thought that Corey Campbell was capable of this.
It's like there's a different side of him that we don't know about.
And when the detectives received the forensics results from the crime scene, They further suggest that Corey was capable of murder.
The handgun that was discovered under the bed came back as being purchased and owned by Corey Campbell.
Ballistics was able to figure out that was the murder weapon.
Now all the detectives have to do is find him.
This is somebody who fled and should be considered extremely dangerous.
But the manhunt has barely begun when detectives get a call from a sheriff in Forsyth County, North Carolina.
The sheriff tells detectives they were tipped off by someone at a local attorney's office that Corey was in town.
He fled Houston and he went to North Carolina to where his mom and daughter live.
This guy came into the law firm today with his mother and was saying that he think he killed the girl in Houston.
Detectives investigating Darlene Solis's murder have a lead on the whereabouts of their prime suspect, Corey Campbell.
They received word from a sheriff in North Carolina that Corey had turned up at a local law firm seeking representation.
A friend of mine is a friend of one of the lawyers in that law firm that he showed up at with his mother.
Okay.
And what was said to the friend of mine from one of the lawyers that was there was that this guy showed up from Texas saying that he shot a deputy's daughter.
Darlene's stepfather is a Harris County, Texas sheriff's deputy.
The police start working with the authorities in North Carolina to get Corey back here to Houston.
We might be able to get a full-blown charge and warrant for murder issued on him tomorrow, and then we'll just let you guys locate him.
The officers that were involved out in North Carolina were ready to make sure that Corey was held accountable.
The next day, with warrants in hand, North Carolina authorities take Corey into custody.
That was a big relief. I'm like, finally, like, we're getting justice for Darlene. It was like the best news that we had received.
24 hours later, the Houston detectives sit down with Corey for the first time.
And they flew out to North Carolina to try to further the investigation.
I mean, it's up to you. Either you want to talk to us or not. If not,
okay, I'm not allowed without my attorney. One of my attorneys being pleased.
You can do what you want.
I mean, that's certainly everybody's right, but it can be irritating.
Still, the flight isn't entirely a waste.
While detectives are in North Carolina, they're contacted by the pastor where Corey's mom goes to church.
His mom, she called me, and she was hysterical and upset, and said she needed to talk to me.
He says that Corey's mom then put her son on the phone.
He said, "Yo, what's up, man?" He was with Becky, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "Some stuff jumped off or whatever." He said, "I just need prayer." So I told him, I said, "I'll pray for you." I said, "But what's going on?" And he said, "One thing led to another, man. And me and my girlfriend, we got into it. It just happened." And I said, "What happened?" I said, "Did you kill him?" He said, "Yeah."
Instead of going to the police, he went to a pastor and he was confessing to what he's done.
He said, "Yeah, I popped off like 3 times, you know what I'm saying?" And I said, what do you mean popped off? Popped off what? And he says, "I shot him."
And he's talking to him matter-of-factly, not really seemingly showing any sorrow over what he's done.
I said, "Do you know for a fact that she's dead?" He said, "Yes, she did." I said, "Well, how do you know she's dead?" He said, "Well, I shot her in the belly."
The pastor says he'd urged Corey to go to the police.
I said, "Yeah, you need to go, man. If you kill her, you need to take yourself in."
When he heard Corey had been arrested, the pastor contacted detectives himself.
I cannot, as a asked her as a human being, know something like that, just sit on the information.
Corey is extradited back to Texas, and when he finally goes on trial for Darlene's murder in April of 2023, the prosecution portrays him as a jealous ex who refused to let go.
So, you wanna stay in tonight so we can hang out?
Come on, quiet.
What? I just want to spend time with you.
Darlene was simply trying to help him get back on his feet. And the fact that she had already told him we're not getting back together and that she was actively dating someone was one of the final breaking points for Corey to finally realize that he didn't have a chance.
Despite that, the prosecutors believe that on the day of the murder, Corey pleaded with Darlene to take him back.
Honestly, I think it's time for you to look for your own place. This is not working out.
Please.
I told you it wasn't gonna happen this time.
She said she didn't want to be with him anymore.
It didn't matter what he did or what he bought her. She was going to leave his life and he couldn't take it.
You don't mean that.
I do. I'm sorry, but I do.
Don't walk away from me.
Corey was much more possessive and aggressive than a lot of people knew.
He did not see her as a human. He saw her as a possession, and he therefore took action to get control over his possession, which resulted in her death.
Just like the story we've heard millions of times before. It's, I'll have her or nobody will have her.
Then he'd stashed the gun under the bed and fled the scene.
A lot of these types of crimes are passionate crimes, and they're not really well thought out.
When it's the defense's turn, Corey's attorneys put him on the stand.
When Corey took the stand, the defense's position was that there was essentially an accidental discharge during the struggle of a gun that led to the death of Darlene.
His story wasn't adding up. Darlene was a tiny girl.
They were trying to say that Darlene could somehow overpower Corey, that her finger was on the trigger and it went off 2 or 3 more times after she sustained a headshot. And we pointed out all the contradictions and inconsistencies in that statement. Stories about his possessive and aggressive nature. I think it really presented a picture to the jury of who Corey truly was.
When the jury returns with a verdict, it's clear they agree with the prosecution's take.
They found him guilty of murder.
He was sentenced to 40 years, and he has to serve at least half of that before he becomes eligible for parole.
That just kind of isn't fair for the family, that he only got 40 years and didn't get life. But I thank God for the guilty verdict.
When you lose someone that way, nothing feels like justice, right? No amount of time, no amount of sentencing, because at the end of the day, I still do not have this person that you took away from me.
All Darlene's friends and family can do in her absence is hope that her story can prevent others from suffering a similar fate.
It's important for victims to realize that they are in an abusive relationship. But a part of that is cutting all contact, because as long as they have that contact or connection to you, they will use that as a way to play on your vulnerabilities.
It may be painful at first, but in the long run, you'll be glad you did it, and the alternative could be very tragic.
I miss her just calling me and asking me if I was okay, if I needed anything, asking me to do things with her. I miss her personality. I just miss everything about Darlene.
She was courageous. She had a lot of love to give, a lot of love. And she would brighten up your day. I'll be grieving for her loss for the rest of my life.
They were able to bring him back a few times, but the damage was already done.
They couldn't fix his heart. This kid with the biggest heart in the world. You can't fix his heart.
Now imagine 30 people in the middle of the street. This wasn't just a fight, it was a brawl, a riot.
He has his cell phone up. It kicks on and starts recording, and it captures the ultimate moment.
There was a picture posted on social media. There was a comment made.
That comment started a firestorm.
We want to fight, we want to fight, we want to fight.
The end result is this huge desire for payback, to get revenge.
He came with the intent to seek and destroy, and that's what he did.
Just before 5 p.m. on March 18th, 2020, 911 dispatchers in Albany, New York, received multiple calls about a street brawl on Madison Avenue.
You just have absolute chaos. It's people running around, you're screaming. It's just a formula for disaster.
911, I have a disturbance at Madison Avenue. Okay, is there a fight going on there? Absolutely, yes. Somebody's gonna get hurt out here.
You can hear a series of 911 calls.
I was on the phone with 911. My mom was on it. Everyone was on the phone.
When police finally arrive at the scene, there's people all over the place, and a 22-year-old man laying in a pool of blood.
Paramedics reached the young man who was bleeding from an injury to his chest. Several of the young man's family members are among the crowd. They identify him as 22-year-old Maurice Skeen.
He's on the ground and he said, Graham, I gotta get up. I gotta get up, Graham. He said, I can't breathe. And I said, no, Maurice, you can't get up. You can't get up. You have to lay down.
Maurice Mo Skeen was born on January 24th, 1998. Maurice's parents weren't able to care for him, so his grandmother, Tracy, stepped up to the plate.
When he was 5, he came to live with me permanently. We were inseparable from that point on. Maurice was an easy kid. He was easy. He wanted to make you happy. And as long as you were okay, he was okay.
Maurice was talented and confident.
Maurice wanted to play basketball because his brothers played basketball. But Maurice wasn't that good at basketball, but he stuck with it and he continued with it until he became really good at basketball.
Maurice graduated high school.
He kept his grades up. He did excellent in school. So proud to see him walk across that stage. After he graduated Albany High School, he went to Mohawk University. And he was just, just excited about going to college and happy to be there.
And Albany graduating is a big deal within itself. Some people aren't fortunate enough to do that. So with him graduating and going off to college, he made everyone very proud with him.
He wanted to be an engineer because he was very good at math and measurement and all of that.
But at school, something else grabbed his interest.
He went to college. Some kind of way he got interested in rap, and he came home from school one day and he said, Graham, I'm gonna be a rapper. If that's what you want to do, I support you. And he put everything he had into becoming a rapper.
Maurice teamed up with his friend, Jamir.
Got an opportunity to open up for Little Baby and The Baby, and with us opening up, me and Maurice, it was about 200 to 300 people within the stands getting ready for a packed out show. And that was great.
In 2020, Maurice shifted his focus to helping his grandmother realize a dream of her own.
Maurice knew that I wanted my own restaurant. It's always been my dream. So him and his brothers got together and they presented me with a storefront. And he took me down there and he opened the door and both of them was like, Graham, this is your dream.
Him and his brother put their minds together to get this rental space that was like gutted. They went in and they threw out all the old stuff. They was painting, they was doing floors, they was sheetrocking, and he was doing majority of the work. So like that was happening and then boom.
But before the business is ready to open, a street brawl leaves Maurice bleeding from a stab wound to the chest.
He was still conscious at that time, but he kept saying that it hurt. It hurts.
This young man is still laying in his pool of blood, conscious, saying that it hurts. So paramedics try to stop the blood and rush him to Albany Hospital.
When law enforcement first arrived, the scene was hectic and crowded. Within a matter of minutes, the crowd has disappeared.
So many people involved, maybe up to 50 people that are located there as potential witnesses. Unfortunately, most people took off.
Instead, investigators look for physical evidence.
Police are doing their job, combing the area, looking for evidence, trying to find any little piece that would lead them to a suspect, but all they find is a pool of blood and a hairbrush laying in it.
The blood is photographed, and the hairbrush bagged as evidence. Then, detectives spot something that might give them what they need. Cameras.
The police department have direct access to cameras at red lights at most intersections. It gives them the ability to see if at that intersection where this fight took place, whether or not there's any camera angles that pick up the fight, parts of the fight, maybe the stabbing.
Investigators request footage from the city.
In order to stab someone, especially in the heart, you have to be at a certain range. You have to be in close proximity. So the question is, who was Maurice fighting?
22-year-old Maurice Skeen is fighting for his life at Albany Medical Center after being stabbed in the chest during a street brawl. His family waits at Maurice's grandmother's house for news of his condition.
It was COVID, all of that rules and stuff. So we calling to see how he doing in the emergency room, calling. And they put me on hold. And she was like, we have to get back to you.
Hours later, homicide detectives show up at the front door.
I was like already frustrated, so like when they came in, they was like lingering a little bit. But I'm like, just speak, like.
And it was like, if I didn't make it.
Doctors tried really hard to keep him alive, and they were able to bring him back a few times. But the wound was deep, there was a hole in his heart, a piece was gone, so the damage was already done. Maurice Skeen dies of a single stab wound to his heart.
They couldn't fix his heart. His heart. This kid with the biggest heart in the world, you can't fix his heart.
In spite of the family's grief, detectives must press them for information about the brawl. They say it started when a young woman from the neighborhood, Layla, passed away. Layla suffered from spinal muscular atrophy.
When she passed away, there was a wake. Somebody took a photo of Layla at the wake.
There was a picture posted on social media, and there was a comment made.
The comment was posted by Maurice's cousin, 18-year-old Talia Green.
one of the girls said she looked flat. My niece Talia said, flat like who? Flat Stanley?
Flat Stanley was a child's story about a boy that was as flat as a piece of paper.
And then that, everybody got the laughing emoji. And after that, my niece's phone was just ringing, chirping, dinging off the hook.
Everybody took it the wrong way. I mean, I know I should never said it, but yeah. People was texting me all over Messenger, asking me, like, oh, why you say that? Basically like coming aggressive to me. Oh, we want to fight, we want to fight, we want to fight.
The tension came to a head earlier that evening.
I was at home watching television, me and Talia. She's always in my bed, so we were laying in my bed watching TV. And her phone was blowing up. There was no way that this was just one person texting that fast and that many at one time. And so I looked over and I said, who is that blowing up your phone like that? And she was like, these stupid girls, Grandma. I was like, well, what's going on with these stupid girls? She said, and now everybody wants to fight me.
She was very loved by a lot of people. So when people saw this Facebook post of Talia, things became heated. Emotions being what they were at the time after the loss of someone that they loved.
There were a car full of girls that came to fight Talia that day. Talia has always been a tough kid. So Talia went out there, there go with the name. She went out there and she fought. I'm calling the police, they're not answering. They're not sending anybody. Cop rides by, I stop him.
The fight gets broken up. The cops basically talk to them and say, you gotta get out of here. The girls say something like they're gonna come back. Shortly after the police leave, people came back, but this time a lot more.
And that's when Maurice and my other grandson got up and went outside. My protector went out there to protect, as he always does.
He's tried to de-escalate the situation, but it got worse.
And that's when all hell broke loose.
This wasn't just a fight. It was a brawl, a riot, something straight out of a movie.
Tracy is calling 911 and trying to get the cops back, and she keeps calling, and they're telling her someone's coming.
911, what's that? If you're emergency, I'm calling about that. Y'all waiting for somebody to get killed? What's going on there? You can hear what's going on.
And they just don't get there fast enough.
A girl yells out to me, yo, you better get your boy. He leaking. And so when I looked up, I saw blood on Maurice's shirt. And so I ran to him. And I guess that's when he noticed, because he hadn't noticed that he was even stabbed at the time. And I carried him out to the sidewalk, and I laid him down.
In the chaos, Maurice Skeen had been stabbed.
I just didn't expect a lot of this. All of this, I didn't expect to be sitting here talking about him in the past tense.
In his service, there was a good amount of people at his service. Unfortunately, it was during COVID, so there was a lot of restrictions on what could and couldn't be done. We was allowed to have a viewing for him, and we was allowed to bring him to the graveyard. We weren't allowed to do an actual service, but for the viewing and for bringing him to the graveyard, there was a great number of people. Once again, he was charismatic, you know, so he was a hard guy not to like.
Investigators in Albany, New York learned that the deadly street brawl that led to the stabbing death of Maurice Skeen was the result of a clash on social media.
There was a comment said, and there was back and forth going on. It transpired into them fighting. Ended in Maurice getting stabbed.
The brawl took place outside of Maurice's grandmother's home. While several of his relatives witnessed the chaos, no one witnessed the actual stabbing.
The fight was total chaos. I couldn't remember none of it because I was so emotional up there. I didn't even know who had done it. And I was right there, I didn't know. Nobody knew who killed him. Nobody saw.
Maurice's godmother, Shantae, recalls seeing one man make verbal threats toward Maurice.
The gentleman kept saying, yo, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. And he had his hand in his pocket. That hand never left his pocket.
The boy had the illest look in his eye. And he kept telling Mo he was gonna kill him. Kill him, kill him, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. He said it so much that Shantae said that the hairs literally stood up on her real head. You understand? Under her wig. She said she believed him.
Was the man gripping a knife inside his pocket? Shantae is unable to ID him. Talia gives investigators the names of several individuals who were present at the fight.
I know of most of them. Like, I went to school with most of them, passed them in the hallway or whatever.
Hopeful that someone else saw something, investigators start knocking on doors.
All of the witnesses that were there, the neighbors and everything, not one person saw this person with a knife in their hand that actually stabbed the victim.
But that doesn't mean they can't help.
A lot of the neighbors came outside and people started recording with their phones.
You had people filming from their windows, from the buildings.
As technicians work to collect the footage, investigators hone in on the list of names from Talia.
The detectives put together what are called photo rays. They showed these photo rays to the family members so that they could try to begin to identify who had come to the house and engaged in this fight with Maurice.
Shantae is certain she spots the man who threatened Maurice.
I didn't see the stabbing, but I know who said he wanted to kill him.
Shantae Coleman identified this person, Darius Coakley, in a photo ray saying this is the person.
Investigators are eager to speak with 21-year-old Darius. But when they go to his home, they learn from witnesses that Darius is gone.
He packed up his things quickly, called his mother, and left the area. He deactivated his social media.
It appears that Darius is laying low. As investigators continue to look for him, they learn the footage from the city's surveillance cameras is ready.
Unfortunately, we, pretty quickly learned that although it caught portions of the fight, where the stabbing happens is right out of view.
Investigators still have the cell phone footage collected from witnesses, which has continued to trickle in as news of Maurice's death spreads through his neighborhood.
Given that they were cell phone videos, they were moving a lot. They were not steady, and they were from a variety of angles. It wasn't clear where the knife was or who was doing the stabbing.
The most difficult part in this case was sorting out who was responsible for stabbing Maurice, because he was fighting with multiple different people and it was only a single stab wound. It was a very quick blow that struck him one time.
We decided to send those videos to the New York State Police Lab so that they could arrange them and use technology to try to make it less complicated or confusing. And that took a lot of time. They have, you know, a massive caseload.
While they wait, investigators ask Maurice's family to take a look at the videos, paying close attention to who was near Maurice.
In watching the videos, we could see that where we believe Maurice had been stabbed, there was at least 3 people that could have been the suspect.
One of those men is Darius Coakley. Maurice's family helps identify the other 2.
The 2 individuals that were closest to Maurice at the time of the stabbing, apart from Darius Coakley, was a Ramir Stevenson and a Najalik Giggets. Before Maurice is stabbed, the person that he is physically fighting with and punching is Ramir Stevenson.
If you watch the videos and my cousin come out the gate, he's the first person he come in contact with fighting.
Darius Coakley can see that the victim is fighting with Ramir, and he positions himself right behind a vehicle that they're going to pass through. And at that area where basically 2 cars are parked at a curb is the victim, Maurice Skeen, Darius Coakley, Ramir Stevenson, and Najali Giggets, all in a very confined space. And we know that Maurice is stabbed there.
Did Ramir stab Maurice as they fought? Or did Darius or Najali take advantage of the chaotic moment to plunge a knife into Maurice's heart?
There were 3 main potential suspects. We knew that we had to eliminate 2 individuals that did not do it.
Following the stabbing death of Maurice Skeen, investigators in Albany used cell phone video collected from witnesses to narrow the list of suspects down to 3. Darius Coakley, Ramir Stevenson, and Najali Giggets. They find Ramir the next day.
When the police find Ramir Stevenson, he is stopped by law enforcement in, I believe it was North Carolina, a southern state. He is arrested because he has a large quantity of marijuana in the car. And when the police find out that he'd been stopped in North Carolina, they either drove or flew to interview him. He was willing to speak with the police, and he told them, if I remember correctly, that he didn't know who had stabbed the victim, that he wasn't the one that did it, but he was willing to speak to a degree openly about what happened, which was not ultimately very indicative of him being the suspect.
As for the remaining 2 suspects, Darius Coakley remains in the wind. And it looks like Najali Giggets may be as well.
We obtained information that he fled immediately after, and that's also a huge indicator of someone's guilt that we look at as detectives, is what are someone's actions after they commit a crime.
Najali Giggets had some warrants on some other charges, and it appeared that he was hiding out.
Months after the murder, investigators get an unexpected surprise when Darius reaches out to them. They learn that Darius has spent the last couple of months at his father's house in Brooklyn.
Darius hired an attorney. That attorney called the police department and said, don't speak to my client. And if there are going to be charges, you are going to, charge my client with any sort of a crime, contact me.
For the next several months, the investigation stalls out. Maurice's family grapples with grief and unanswered questions.
With situations like this, right, everyone wants answers quick, right? We forget that there's a process that goes on with everything. So there was times when everyone is frustrated.
We felt that this was a heat of the moment homicide. This was personal in the moment, and we felt that the risk was worth taking our time.
Over a year after Maurice was killed, investigators finally locate Najalik Giggets. Najalik denies stabbing Maurice, and it appears he avoided questioning because of his outstanding warrants. With all three suspects denying involvement, investigators have no choice but to turn back to the evidence. They learned that the state lab has finished compiling the cell phone videos.
We had sent the videos to the lab, and we got back what are called compilation videos. Simple enough, right? They laid them out the best that they could. But even them, they were tough to discern.
There is a moment in one of the videos that catches their attention.
On that video, after Darius Coakley is getting thrown around by Maurice Skeen, you see someone run over and bend down to grab something.
It's funny how timing is, but a truck passes by on video and blocks what she is reaching over, bending over to pick up. But it captures just enough to show that she bends down and picks something up in the middle of the street.
Police can only assume that this can potentially be the murder weapon.
They keep watching. Investigators come upon another clip that appears to zero in on the exact seconds they have been looking for.
As fate may have it, there was a gentleman, he was sitting at a red light, and he witnesses this brawl start, and lucky for us, he put up his cell phone and hit record.
When we took that video, zoomed in on it, and went frame by frame, you're actually able to see when the knife is displayed by Darius.
And it captures the ultimate moment. Darius pulls out a knife and stabs the victim in the heart. Darius stabbed Maurice. It's the type of thing that once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Investigators know they will need more than a grainy video to convict Darius. Law enforcement identified the young woman in the video as Alexis Brown. Albany police bring her in for questioning.
They show her the video footage. She felt cornered and she decided to cooperate.
She was actually quite forthcoming with information, and I think that she truly wanted to help us.
Alexis goes on to share that she was the driver to a group of people who were part of the fight, and that there was someone in her car with a knife.
That person was Darius Coakley. Alexis describes the brawl as pure chaos. And then all of a sudden, she realized it had turned deadly.
You just see arms. You don't know what struck him, who struck him. He's holding his chest, and then he's just gasping. He just go down to one knee. He's just sitting there.
Alexis says she saw Darius fling toward her car. He called back to her.
She hears a male voice as she says it on the stand. She hears a male voice come from her car and say, you know, pick that up or pick up the knife. And she looks down in the middle of the street and sees it. She picks up the knife.
During that interview, she stated that she put it in the cup holder of her vehicle and then didn't see what happened to the knife after that.
While Alexis didn't see the stabbing, her statement allows investigators to connect the dots.
There was only one person who was injured to the point where they were bleeding, That knife had to have been the weapon that stabbed and killed Maurice.
Police in Albany have zeroed in on Darius Coakley as the prime suspect in the stabbing death of Maurice Skeen. They learned that 21-year-old Darius is a lifelong resident of Albany.
Darius had a mother who was a single mom, working 2 jobs. He was never in any sort of legal trouble. Darius had no criminal record.
They also learned that Darius met Layla in high school. He formed an intense bond with the young woman in the wheelchair.
Darius and her were incredibly close. He obviously cared, loved this person.
Investigators believe that Darius was grief-stricken over Layla's death. So much so that he joined a group headed to seek revenge in her name at Maurice's grandmother's house. But investigators believe that Darius headed into the fight armed with more than his fists.
That's the thing, Darius included a weapon. And, you know, he's the only one out of all the people that were fighting, 30 plus people. Everybody just used their hands, but he felt the need that to pull out a knife.
Over a year after the murder, Darius is finally arrested on August 6th, 2021.
We felt 100% confident presenting it to a grand jury. Once the grand jury indicted him for murder in the second degree and we had a warrant in hand from the grand jury, we contacted his attorney, who then had him turn himself in to the police department.
When Darius came into the police station, he had just shark eyes looking at us like there was no soul left in his eyes. And I told him that he was under arrest for murder.
Prosecutors prepare for trial. As they do, they realize a potentially catastrophic mistake.
The crime scene and the placement of some of the blood evidence was really crucial in this case. And in the crime scene photos, you could see that where he went to the ground, there was a big spot of blood. The police never swabbed that pool of blood.
A weak point defense attorneys will certainly seize.
That pool of blood was important because he must have been stabbed before he lands on the ground with the pool of blood. And the people he was with right before that must have been the stabber.
In a case like this, all you need is reasonable doubt in order to have the suspect walk.
The defense at trial, they could easily say that, they can't prove that he was stabbed at that point. That could have been someone else's blood. They can't prove to you whose blood that was.
Prosecutors team up with investigators. They pore over the evidence, zeroing in on what could be their saving grace.
A hairbrush gets dropped during the scrum in the street and it lands in blood. That hairbrush was collected. That hairbrush was in the pool of blood. We rushed that hairbrush to the lab. They did DNA testing and it was Maurice's blood, just like we knew it was.
So by process of elimination, we can say Maurice Skeen was stabbed here. Who was around him at that time? And we're just systematically going through and dissecting the video evidence and the witness statements we have. And once we determined who was in proximity of Maurice at the time of the stab, we knew it was Darius Coakley, Najalik Giggets, and Ramir Stevenson. At the time of the stab, Ramir Stevenson has his hands out, nothing in them. Najalik Giggets, you can see him fighting, nothing in his hands. The only person with something in their hand was Darius Coakley, and it was in his left hand.
As Darius's trial date looms near, prosecutors are confident. But so is Darius. Instead of alleging he didn't intend to kill Maurice, Darius pleads not guilty.
Darius Coakley opted to go all or nothing. Here's someone who had no prior criminal record. He hasn't been to state prison. Darius does not want to take that chance. He goes all in
In November 2022, 2.5 years after Maurice Skeen is stabbed during a street brawl, his accused murderer, Darius Coakley, goes on trial. Darius's defense team makes the most of the chaos that surrounded Maurice's murder.
A common defense tactic can be confusion. In a street fight, there was so much going on that the argument really was you can't tell what's happening.
The defense team took a stand of trying to pin the murder on the other two suspects, Ramir Stevenson and Nazalik Giggets.
Their focus really was simply that it was not him and focusing on Ramir and Nazalik. They didn't call any witnesses. The defendant didn't testify.
Prosecutors counter. They call Maurice's family members, who give heart-wrenching accounts of the night he died.
Maurice's grandmother testified about Maurice being the protector, the elder boy of the family, and he's trying to protect the family. Telling everybody they need to leave, stop disrespecting my grandmother's house. Darius, the defendant in this case, got into his face.
And during that part of it, Maurice sort of takes his hand and mushes it into Darius and sort of shoves him away.
Shantae, Maurice's godmother, testifies that Darius became enraged.
Darius just gets incredibly mad. He's seething. He is saying that he's going to kill him. He is saying verbally he's going to kill him.
Prosecutors show what happened next when they present the jury with video from the brawl.
I was able to really present to them some still shots that were zoomed in, slowed down with, things that were circled and show it to them over and over again.
It really came together with the state police and the phenomenal video work they did, where now we had a knife in Coakley's hand. We had a knife in Coakley's left hand, and he's using that left hand with that knife to stab Maurice Skeen in the chest.
You could see clearly that it was not Nazalik and Ramir. It was Darius Coakley.
As they close, prosecutors are clear that Darius's actions in those seconds were no accident.
He did have the intent to cause the death because where he stabbed him. He stabbed him right in the middle of his chest, which is where we all know what's in the middle of our chest, which is the heart, and that's exactly where he got him. So even though he only stabbed him once, we believe that he had the intent to cause the death of Maurice.
Maurice was defending his family, like I believe any man would do. Darius came to seek and destroy. He came with a knife. He came with the intent to seek and destroy, and that's what he did.
Finally, after closing arguments, the jury announces they have reached a verdict.
Darius Coakley was found guilty of second-degree murder and the case of Maurice Skeen.
The judge imposed 25 years to life in state prison. You have a crass comment which prompted this huge desire for payback. To pay back, get revenge. We're gonna get revenge for what you said to this young woman who just died 3 weeks ago. And then you have Darius Coakley, plunging a knife into the heart of Maurice. The result now is Maurice's life has been taken, and Darius Coakley's life is now in he's in state custody.
We got justice for Maurice, but at the same time, someone else's life is being destroyed.
But it's a lose-lose. Another black man behind bars for 25 years.
Darius doesn't understand the light that he took out of my family's eyes. Maurice died not because he feared what was in front of him, But because he was defending what was behind him.
To honor Maurice, his family opened the store. A dream Maurice shared with his grandmother.
Maurice worked all day and all night in the winter to get it open. And he missed the opening. He wasn't there.
After that happened, his brother had to take on to finishing everything up, and he got the store up and running. And now it grew into another. He has a juice bar across the street. So, you know, but Mo will be a part of all this. He was there. He was a big part of it.
I miss him. I just wish he wasn't.
I started going into questions. Where are you at? Tell me where you are. What's going on? Where were you shot? Then he stops for a minute, and then he says, I love you and the kids and to take care of the kids. He stopped responding.
Because of the trauma from the gunshot, most likely his lungs were filling with blood. The body's trying very hard, it's working overdrive. The lawyer reached out to the police and volunteered his client.
He can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
He was actually a primary target, the guy they really would like to have shot. The bad guys, they don't care. It's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
October 19th, 2012, Syracuse, New York. It's just after 8 p.m. on the city's north side.
The Syracuse Police Department received 3 911 calls for a shooting.
Officers rush to the location where they find 2 victims.
They found one victim on the ground. And then they also found another person that had a minor, very minor injury from a gunshot wound that grazed his back, his upper back.
The man on the ground is struggling to breathe. Officers attempt first aid.
They didn't see obvious injury to him at that point. So what they did is they cut his shirt off, and then they spotted a small amount of blood. He was shot once in the left side near his armpit. Because of the trauma from the gunshot, most likely his lungs were filling with blood. The body's trying very hard, it's working overdrive to get air in. Just a minute or two after that, our ambulance crew arrived and was able to provide advanced medical care.
EMTs rushed the man to the hospital. The second victim identifies himself as 20-year-old Shavoki Bloodworth.
He was looked at by ambulance personnel on the scene and declined further treatment.
Shavoki tells police he doesn't know the other victim. At the hospital, the man fighting for his life is soon identified as 30-year-old Walter Bell, a resident of South Carolina. Walter Bell III was born on July 12, 1982, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. At a young age, Walter's parents separated, and he went to live with his mother in New York.
Walter was born in South Carolina, but spent most of his childhood and growing up in Long Island.
There, Walter was part of a large community of family and friends that included 2 brothers, 4 younger sisters, and his childhood best friend, Latia.
Everybody was just carefree, just running around having a good time. Causing destruction with the parents, you know, running the parents crazy.
Walter took care of his siblings.
Walter was the protector. He felt like he had to protect his sisters. The sisters got boyfriends and he had to interrogate them.
He's just like so family oriented. He cares about people and he put others before himself.
In his teenage years, Walter's mom grew concerned that her son was headed down the wrong path.
Walter started getting into a little bit of the rougher lifestyle of Long Island, so his mom decided to send him back to South Carolina to live with his dad.
Orangeburg, South Carolina was a big change. But not too long after he moved, Walter welcomed a familiar face to town.
My family was gradually moving to South Carolina because there was land owned within the family. And so when we moved, I boo-hoo cried from New York to Virginia. And I was kind of relieved when I got closer to South Carolina because that phone rang and it was Walter calling me.
In South Carolina, Walter and Latia's lifelong friendship blossomed into a full-blown romance.
Walter was always there for her. She was always there for him. He was gonna marry Tia.
Walter's home life was rocky. During their senior year of high school, Walter and Latia came to depend on each other like they never had before.
He had nowhere to stay, I had nowhere to stay due to, family issues. And we walked and walked and walked throughout the nights. We went up into a football field and slept in the announcer's box for weeks.
So it was like him and Tia was pretty much just living on the street.
The young lovers were on their own. Walter's sister-in-law tried to help.
Santana would sneak food and covers and blankets and pillows and things out of the window for us at night. And nobody knew we was outside that window but her.
In 2003, more trouble caught up with Walter.
Walter got into some things that he should not have. He was accused of breaking into homes and stealing things.
21-year-old Walter was arrested and charged with second-degree burglary. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I cried and I cried and I cried. And we were allowed to spend some time together afterwards, back by the holding cells. And Walter looked at me and said, the only thing I want you to do is live your life to whatever makes you happy. Just make sure that when I come home, I have a place to come home to.
When he was in prison, it was never a time that he didn't write, he didn't call, he always kept in contact, always.
There was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of me trying to find myself, a lot of me trying to rebuild myself back up.
In October 2010, after almost 7 years behind bars, Walter was granted parole. By then, Latia was a single mother to 3 young kids. Walter and Latia picked up where they left off.
When he came home, he loved her kids. He took all of her kids in, they was his kids.
When he started bonding with the kids is when it was just okay, well, it is what it is, we can't change it.
The childhood sweethearts settled into life together, with Walter taking on the role of stepdad. By the summer of 2012, they had plans to marry. But first, they needed a fresh start.
He was unable to find work because of his record. He was just trying and just staying focused and not going back on the prior ways that he was doing, the things he was doing before he went to jail. He was trying to make a way and work, actually work.
And then Walter hears about an opportunity back in New York.
Walter's cousin offered to help him get a job at a recycling center in Syracuse.
I said, well, I don't know. I really don't want to go back to New York. And he looked me in my eyes and he said, Tia, I'll ride with you no matter what. Whatever decisions you make, I ride with you on it. I want you to ride with me on this. That Friday, we packed up 3 laundry bags of clothes and shoes, packed the kids up, and got on the Greyhound.
The couple stayed with friends and in hotels until they could find a place of their own. Around the same time, Latia delivered news that there was more change to come.
I said, Walter, and I showed him the pregnancy test. He was like, are you serious? He was so happy. Within 5 minutes, he had done called his mom. He had done called his oldest sister. He called his god sister. He was just so happy.
He was so excited that he was about to be a dad. Like, nobody could take that moment from him. Like, that moment means the world.
Just 6 weeks after arriving in Syracuse, Walter Bell is fighting for his life at a hospital following a life-threatening gunshot wound. Another man, Shavoki Bloodworth, was grazed by a bullet in the same attack. He is still on the scene.
He voluntarily gave part of his story as to what happened, as to how he saw the incident unfold.
Which isn't much.
Mr. Bloodworth was saying he didn't know the man, Mr. Bell in this case, and that he was just an innocent bystander, didn't know anything, just heard some gunshots and felt something hit his back.
Investigators search for evidence. They recover 2 .25 caliber shell casings.
The other thing you want to immediately do is start to canvass the area, especially for cameras. And then you want to find anybody that's close by that may have observed what happened. One of the people that called 911, her and her daughter got a good look at 2 males that walked past their house.
They described them as wearing dark clothing.
They saw 2 black men in their 20s approach the victim. A few minutes later, shots rung out.
And then they saw them go past back by their house, go back to a vehicle they described as a white SUV that then left the scene. They didn't see them with a gun. They didn't see them actually shoot anybody. They just saw them appearing going to the crime scene and then leaving the crime scene.
Police put out an APB with the descriptions. Then, less than an hour after the initial 911 calls, detectives get an update on Walter's condition.
His bleeding was internal, so there wasn't much that they could do. Walter was pronounced dead at the Upstate University Hospital.
Now they have a homicide investigation on their hands.
The late hours of October 19th, 2012. Police in Syracuse, New York are investigating a shooting when they learn that one of the victims, 30-year-old Walter Bell, did not survive. Detectives go to the hospital where doctors have recovered the bullet from Walter's body.
It was a small .25 caliber, consistent with the 2 shell casings that were found up the street.
Hospital staff tell detectives that the victim's fiancée, Latia Walker, is on the phone. She has just been informed of the shooting.
The detective asked me what my name was, where did I live, how soon could I get to the hospital. And I said to him, I don't even know where, I don't know where anything is. I've only been in town for 6 weeks. I would have to figure out how I'm getting there. And I told him I had my kids.
Detectives agreed to meet Latia at the hotel where she and Walter have been staying since arriving in town.
They showed up, they knocked on the door, and one of them asked me to step outside with him. The other one stayed inside with the kids. And he told me that Walter didn't make it. At that point, I lost all hope for everything. Everything.
Latia explains that earlier in the evening, she and Walter had been at the hotel when he received a phone call.
It was his cousin calling and saying, he wanted to spend some time with him and things of that nature. So Walter decided to go with him. Walter left the motel probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Anytime Walter goes anywhere, when he gets to where he's going, he always called me to let me know he made it to where he was going okay. So I called Walter about 6:45, 7 o'clock. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. I just, I lost track of time. I forgot to call you, my bad. And he's like, but I'm gonna call you before I come home because I wanna know what you need from the store. So I said, okay. Around 7:55, he called me. Automatically, I'm thinking he's in the grocery store. Let me tell him what I want. So I'm like, yeah, I want some strawberries and I want some bananas and make sure you get some cereal for the kids for in the morning. And he's like, Tia, stop. I said, well, what? Tia, I've been shot. He sounded okay, and I thought he was playing with me.
For about a whole minute of that phone call, she believes he's joking.
He says, no, I've really been shot. And then he's paused. His whole demeanor, everything changed. He paused, and now I'm taking him seriously because now I could tell something is wrong. And so I started going into questions. Where are you at? Tell me where you are. What's going on? Where were you shot? You know, I'm asking 1,000,001 questions, and the only thing he's saying is that he couldn't breathe. You know, I can't breathe. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Then he stops for a minute, and then he says, I love you and the kids, and to take care of the kids. He stopped responding. We've always had the relationship of getting to one another when we needed to. And I couldn't get to him. I didn't know where he was.
Desperate and unsure what to do, Latia started calling local hospitals.
The only thing that could go through my head was, what am I gonna do now? Well, I'm here by myself. I got my kids. How am I gonna tell these kids?
Police ask Latia if she knows anyone who might have been after Walter.
They want to know exactly what could have caused this homicide, if he had any enemies or any known people in the area that would want to harm him. Latia makes them aware that they had literally just moved.
He had just really come here from South Carolina with his family, and then before that was from Long Island.
The only information Latia has is that Walter had been with his cousin in the hours before he died.
I thought he had gotten into it with somebody. That's the only, explanation that I could have come up with.
She gives the address where Walter's cousin lives, just a block away. Investigators hope that he can shed light on what went down in Walter's final hours.
At this point, detectives have more questions than answers.
It's really about talking to people.
Well, we just want to go to New York together and see how, like this work out. So it's like this was an opportunity for them both to start a new life. I just had this feeling about him in New York. Tia called me on that night, and she was just crying, screaming, yelling, like, I'm like, Tia, what's wrong? Like, calm down, like, what's wrong? When she finally got it together, she said, Walter been shot. It was hard. It was very hard, especially she was in New York at the time and I was in South Carolina. I just feel like it was the worst night of my life.
After the fatal shooting of Walter Bell, Syracuse detectives head to the residence where Walter's cousin lives with friends. Police learn they had welcomed Walter when he arrived in Syracuse.
Mr. Bell had lived with them when he first moved up from South Carolina. They were very cooperative.
The group tells police that Walter was still learning the nuances of street politics on the North Side. In fact, they said Walter made a near-fatal blunder a couple days before by walking on Catherine Street, the same street where he ultimately lost his life.
They told us that he had been shot at just a couple days before that, less than half a block from the incident. And his friends that they lived with on Lodi Street, which is right around the corner, warned him and kept telling him, hey, you shouldn't hang out over there.
Investigators consider whether Walter was unknowingly caught up in a neighborhood feud.
Mr. Bell may not have been a direct target,
They don't know if the target was Walter Bell or if it was Shavoki Bloodworth.
Detectives asked the group what they know about the other shooting victim. They say that despite what he told police at the scene, Walter and Shavoki did know each other.
Mr. Bloodworth and Mr. Bell were known as friends. They would often hang out together.
Investigators questioned why he would hold back.
Now, investigators want to talk to Shavoki Bloodworth to see exactly what he knows.
Before they do, one of Walter's friends offers information about a man he says is at the center of the neighborhood feud.
We heard the name of Mr. Acevedo from the friends of Mr. Bell. All he knew by his nickname, so he accompanied the police in an unmarked vehicle and pointed out the house that it turns out to be Mr. Acevedo's house.
Unfortunately, he isn't home. Investigators shift their focus back to Shavoki Bloodworth and conduct a background search.
Mr. Bloodworth had been involved in the criminal justice system. He had been arrested for dealing drugs. There was some robbery, type street robbery thing. There was probably a dispute that turned bad. So he had been around, he had been in the game, as we'll say.
In the early morning hours of October 20th, Shavoki Bloodworth agrees to come to the station for another interview. At first, Shavoki maintains his story, saying he didn't know Walter Bell or anything about the shooters.
The detective, as he was talking to him, and this is, of course, over a course of a few hours, finally told him, he said, listen, you know, the guy that you were standing there next to, he did pass away. And Mr. Bloodworth actually became emotional over this and broke down in tears. Mr. Bloodworth told the detective then, he goes, okay, he is a friend of mine. I see him every day. And he actually even said that he felt he was a father figure to him. So then he gave a little bit more information.
Shavoki admits he has been involved in the feud and fears that he was the intended target of the shooting, not Walter.
But that's oftentimes how it works. The bad guys, they don't care. They'll take collateral damage. And oftentimes it's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
Shavoki still says he didn't see who fired the shots, but thinks there could be a clue in Walter's dying words.
Mr. Bloodworth even tells the detective that our victim, Mr. Bell, says, look out for streets as he's dying.
Detectives recognize the nickname.
Dron Lundy was on parole and had just gotten out of state prison.
26-year-old Dron is often spotted around town with his brother, 21-year-old Quincy.
Quincy and Dron Lundy were known to the police. They had been involved in the criminal justice system, being arrested on numerous different occasions for a variety of crimes.
That sets off a bunch of bells in the detective's head because those brothers have a long rap sheet in the area.
Within hours of the fatal shooting of Walter Bell, investigators have the names of two men who may have been involved.
Dron Lundy actually had just gotten out of prison. Quincy, who's the younger brother, also has multiple arrests in the area for misdemeanors and felonies, and was also shot himself back in 2009.
Before they reach out to the brothers, investigators attempt to track down the man Walter's friend said was at the center of a neighborhood feud, 20-year-old Jason Acevedo.
Mr. Acevedo was attempted to be located a few different times. Once they finally locate him, he was very uncooperative and denied knowing anything.
Detectives refuse to give up. They continue to press Acevedo for information.
It's almost a lost art, is that one-on-one communication and trying to win over people, get them to give you information. It really is an art form. And, you know, those are the detectives that are the better detectives are people that know how to do that and actually can spend that time necessary to build a relationship.
Eventually, Jason admits to a feud between himself and the Lundy brothers.
He actually gives some of the story, the backstory too, of him being involved in physical altercations with Quincy Lundy, of actual physical fights that occurred in the street in the weeks leading up to the death of Mr. Bell.
Following the interview, investigators begin piecing together the puzzle. In the months prior, the Lundy family had filed a police report.
The Lundy's parents called in that their house was shot up. The police respond, police do a report, they look for shell casings, do what they can to investigate the crime.
No one was charged. But now, investigators consider whether Jason Acevedo was responsible.
He described the fight that he had with Mr. Lundy. He kind of got the worst of it. So that probably is what led to the shootings up of the homes of the Lundy brothers.
The belief that Acevedo was responsible left the Lundy brothers thirsty for revenge.
Their house was shot up in the months leading up to Mr. Bell's death. So they were probably going to exact revenge.
Investigators are still unsure how Walter and Shavoki got caught in the crossfire. They return to the eyewitnesses who described seeing two men flee from the scene of Walter's shooting. Investigators present them with a photo array containing mugshots of Drawn and Quincy Lundy.
They have a really good witness who identifies it, which is pretty powerful because she doesn't know them, was able to quickly point them out of a photo array. Not enough to arrest them, but then everything kept coming back to them.
Detectives reach out to the brothers, who agree to come in for a statement.
Both Lundy brothers voluntarily came in. They didn't arrive together, as I recall, but they were interviewed the same day. They didn't admit to doing this crime, but they admitted that Quincy Lundy was involved in fights with other people that hang out in that area, including Mr. Acevedo.
Quincy says he was not there. He was at home with his mom watching television. Drawn says he's nowhere near Catherine Street during the shooting. He wasn't even on the north side. And that was something that could be easily verified at that time because he had on an ankle bracelet.
Drawn was released from New York State Prison 11 months earlier with a GPS tracking device as a condition of his probation.
The detectives spoke with parole officials. They had said that Mr. Lundy was nowhere near Catherine Street at the time of this incident.
Now they have an eyewitness on scene saying that it was the Lundy brothers, which is a complete contradiction from what they found out from the ankle monitor.
Investigators consider an alternative theory.
They're looking as, okay, so maybe Drawn wasn't there. It was Quincy there with someone else, right?
But Quincy's mom backs up his alibi, stating her son was with her on the night Walter was killed.
Now, mom, sometimes, they could be looking out for their kid, right? So we'll take that with a grain of salt, but the mom seemed earnest enough when she was interviewed and pretty certain. So the detectives are kind of back to square one.
The investigation stalls. Walter's loved ones are left in the lurch. Grieving, pregnant, and alone, Latia lives in fear.
Everybody's worried about me now because I'm in a place where I don't know anyone. I don't have any support. I left Syracuse within 24 hours of Walter passing. And I moved back to Long Island. I stopped speaking to detectives. Reason being, I started getting calls on my personal phone, and it would be people portraying to be detectives. And so now I didn't trust anyone. And I still didn't quite know the story of what happened, so I'm scared.
I don't trust anyone, and I felt like they were trying to figure out where I had moved to. And I didn't want anyone to know where I was.
A lot of times, the violent crime in Syracuse and many other cities is oftentimes a retaliatory act for a previous event. It's the street code, the street justice. It's why actually now, across the country, police agencies now are starting to change. This is a big trend in law enforcement to try to put more resources now into your garden variety shootings. Because oftentimes, a person who gets shot last week and is treated and released, if you will, from the hospital, 1 week later is shooting back at the people who shot him or had already done so. So it's a retaliatory act, and you're trying to interrupt. The police now are trying to really aggressively interrupt that method. So that's a trend, and I think it's a good one.
Following the murder of Walter Bell, his friends and family members are overwhelmed by the loss. 3 months after his death, Walter's daughter is born.
I gave birth January 29th, 2013. And she was born prematurely. She was born at 28 weeks. When I looked at my baby, I looked at her and I broke down and cried. Reason being, the first thing that I saw when I looked at her, she looked just like her dad did, laying in the casket.
He always talk about when I have a little girl, her name's gonna be Destiny Nicole Bell. All the time, he just wanted a little girl. He got what he finally wanted, and he's not here for it.
Adding to the family's pain, the investigation into Walter's murder is at a standstill. His killer, or killers, are still out there. In the summer of 2013, almost 9 months after the shootings, Jason Acevedo is arrested in connection with a string of burglaries. But Jason has another crime on his mind.
Mr. Acevedo, with his conjunction with his lawyer, thought it might be in his best interest to now cooperate in this case to give a more satisfactory resolution to his pending felonies. So his lawyer reached out to the police and the district attorney's office and volunteered his client to cooperate.
Jason reveals that he was there when Walter Bell was shot and can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
Prosecutors make a deal, offering Jason Acevedo a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony.
Jason reveals that on October 19, 2012, he was standing on the sidewalk talking to Walter Bell and Shavoki Bloodworth when he was approached by the Lundy brothers. And it was at that point, shots rang out.
Acevedo says both Lundy brothers pulled out guns and started firing at him, Walter, and their friend, Shavoki Bloodworth.
It appears from the investigation, Mr. Acevedo was actually a primary target. That's probably the guy they really would like to have shot that night.
But Jason escaped unscathed. He fled the scene and didn't know Walter had been killed until he saw it on the news 2 weeks later.
His background, if you will, his basis of knowledge that he finally comes through with is pretty high. And so, his credibility, though he's looking out for his own best interest, his credibility in this case is good.
But his statement goes against what would appear to be irrefutable evidence. The data from Drawn Lundy's ankle bracelet.
So that's when they would go back to the ankle monitor and actually start to look at it more closely. In Onondaga County, we have a crime analysis center. One of the analysts there, they were able to look at it more scientifically, and that's when they realized that that the first parole officer looked at it and misread it or possibly wasn't looking at the actual time that the detective gave him. All of a sudden, okay, boom.
Dron, in fact, was on Catherine Street that night. At that point, detectives immediately issue a warrant for Dron Lundy's arrest for the second-degree murder of Walter Bell.
Based on Jason Acevedo's statement, authorities also issue an arrest warrant for Quincy Lundy. He turns himself in.
He was re-interviewed but didn't give a lot of information. He was arrested for murder in the second degree.
Dron Lundy remains at large.
They asked the family for Dron to call them. They had said, well, he's in Texas somewhere. He actually does call the detectives within a day or two and actually left an address that he lived in. But the address was was a fraudulent one. So the U.S. Marshals Task Force in that area started to knock on doors and see if they could find Mr. Lundy.
Syracuse police finally have enough to charge the two men they believe are responsible.
A warrant is issued for the Lundy brothers' arrest. Quincy is first arrested, but then they discover Dron Lundy flees to Texas.
Investigators do what they can to flush him out, including enlisting the help of the U.S. Marshals and putting pressure on his family.
The police up here in Syracuse still knocking on grandma's and parents' doors. Those efforts must have been enough. Mr. Lundy actually, within a few days thereafter, walks in and turns himself in to a police department down outside of Dallas, Texas. And then he's arrested and later extradited back here to face the charges.
When they finally get Dron Lundy in custody, he's sticking to the story that he was not anywhere near Catherine Street and that he only heard about the gunshots. But police knew there was more to the story.
Dron and Quincy Lundy are tried together in October 2014. Latia attends the trial with Walter's mother.
I want to look these guys in their face. I want to know what happened and why it happened.
Deputy Mark Chapman is assigned to transport the brothers to and from court each day.
My partner and I were present throughout the whole trial because of the brothers' custody status. They looked like, college students. They were very quiet, very disciplined in the courtroom.
Quincy Lundy's attorney sticks to the story that Quincy has nothing to do with the shooting and he was at home with his mother. And his mother continues to corroborate the story. She takes the stand to testify for him, but Quincy himself doesn't take the stand. Dron, on the other hand, takes the stand in his own defense. He admits to the criminal history and admits to the feud with Acevedo, but is adamant about the fact that he had nothing to do with the shooting and did not shoot anyone.
This case was, somewhat circumstantial. We didn't have a murder weapon. They didn't have fingerprint evidence. They didn't have DNA evidence. There wasn't, clear, perfect video. There wasn't a confession. I pictured myself as a juror saying, this could go either way.
Prosecutors attempt to bolster their case by calling the county medical examiner.
Dr. Stoppinger's testimony, they have ways to follow the bullet path as it enters and potentially exits the body. The doctor testified that it appeared that the rounds striking Mr. Bell came from a downward angle. After his testimony, the court took a brief recess. We escorted both brothers from the courtroom to a holding area adjacent to the courtroom and secured them in a holding cell.
Officer Chapman and his partner listen in as the brothers discuss the testimony.
Quincy Lundy said, this doctor is very good for us, for our case. And they then went on to say that it's good for us because we were shooting from up the hill. My partner and I, we look at each other in kind of disbelief. We're like, they basically just confessed to each other that they were shooting.
When the trial resumes, the deputies tell prosecutors what they overheard.
I was hesitant, you know, but law enforcement, we have to adapt. And we did. We testified to exactly what we heard that day.
On October 24th, 2014, the jury returns its verdict.
They were both found guilty of murder in the second degree in Honda County Court and were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. It wasn't just justice for Walter Bell and his family. It was an effort to stop the violence, right? We're always looking to try to stop the violence because this would have kept going.
When the verdict came in, I got a call from Tia. I was happy, but I said still don't take away the pain because, I mean, it's no sentence won't amount to the amount of pain that they caused us. I guess you just have to learn to deal. You just learn to deal with it.
That verdict just basically told me to get on with life. Get on with your life. Today, I'm a mother of 5. I'm married now. I'm happy. My happy ending is my babies. Finding someone that accepted me and my babies. To raise them. Destiny has never met or talked to her father.
She has his ways. Like, you could just look in her eyes and you just know that he's there. He's there.